Elden Ring. It's the hottest new game that's now 2 months old. So if you're watching this video, you've probably already beaten it. I have a few times. And once you beat the game, what can you do? Play the game again or play another game. However, there is a secret third option. Do both. What if I were to disguise Elden Ring as a different video game? Ho ho ho, delightfully devilish, me. One of the upcoming games I'm most excited for is the new Wolverine game from Insomniac, which currently has a release date of TBD.
I want TBD. Is that new?
That's why I decided for the first new game of Elden Ring, that new game should be Wolverine. I'm not really worried about whether or not it would be possible. Iron Pineapple has beaten the game without dealing damage and over the maximum equip load. It seems you can beat this game however you want. Instead, I'll be finding out how fun it is to play through Elden Ring as the Wolverine. At the end of the video, I'll place it on an official Elden Ring fun tier list. Also, if you want to watch these runs live, join my Patreon. I stream it to all my patrons. I could do it on Twitch, but since I already have a Patreon and don't want to make people pay for an additional subscription on another site, I'm doing it there. Watching the runs is at the $1 tier, so it's also $4 cheaper than a Twitch sub. Trying to save you some dough. Now, let's get started. Obviously, our weapon of choice for the majority of the run is going to be the Hookclaws. They are straight up Wolverine claws, but those are locked behind Margit. If there's a glitch to get around him, I don't know it, which is gonna be a running theme for any glitches later. I'm not doing them, not because I'm morally opposed, they just seem kinda hard. Thankfully, the Samurai class starts you out with a katana, a weapon Wolverine does use occasionally. It also starts us in some armor we could use for Wolverine. Despite my many emails, FromSoft has not patched in blue and yellow spandex as an armor set. Again, Wolverine also dresses like a samurai sometimes, cause, you know, he's a samurai. I tried to kill Spiral, a cool deep cut for a first boss in a Wolverine game, but I lost. It's hard. So before we go after Margit, let's get good. Not with skill, but with money. If this is your first Elden Ring video, first of all, thanks. But also, there's a dragon in Caelid, who's so sleepy you can kill him without actually waking him up. But don't forget to grab a pickle in Limgrave first. Eating pickles boosts your experience by 30%. Then you go on a little trip with your horsey to a portal behind a church in eastern Limgrave that takes you to the No-No land. Ride across a bridge, past the meaner dragon, hop up the spirit spring, and get ready to slap some sleepy dragon ass. This is a slog, but it's less of a slog because of something very important to this build: bleed. Bleed is a status effect that deals a flat percentage of damage rather than a basic number of damage. So while each individual hit with our katana isn't doing much, occasionally we just deal 13,000 damage in a single hit. Killing the dragon without bleed, it's possible, but you're gonna need a lot of time. By the time we're done doing this, we'll have over 90,000 runes, and it's important you place them correctly.
Where I want to put these levels, because like it's super important where you put the first ones for this. Oh! Or I'll put them all in vigor. I'm kidding, that's what I wanted to do.
That was actually intentional. I want a ton of health, at least early on. We can boost our stats another 20 points with a talisman nearby, Radagon's Sore Seal, which boosts vigor, endurance, strength, and dexterity by 5 points each, putting our damage at a pretty reasonable level for Margit. And then we get to add the bleed. We head over to Margit with a dump truck's worth of HP and find the Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Strange, outside, willing to help us out. It makes Margit not all that hard. Well, I didn't die. We still haven't upgraded our weapon at all because I'm saving any smithing stones for the claws. Since that's really how you increase your weapon damage, bleed is doing all the damage we're dealing. Stats are fine, but if you want to deal the real damage, you need to upgrade. So Dr. Strange died, and we had to finish the fight solo. Not too bad though. We have bleed and a lot of HP. And with the Fell Omen felled, we can really get this started. The Hookclaws are up the so-called safe path after Margit. Run up some stairs, then under some stairs, and get your adamantium claws. While Wolverine uses a katana even when he has claws, we're officially retiring the katana here. So long, and thanks for all the bleed. Just kidding, we're still gonna bleed. We're just gonna be bleeding with the far superior bleeding claws. Let's review the pros and cons of this weapon. Pros, bleed. Lots of bleed. The item description says they have a 60 bleed proc. That's already 15 higher than our starting katana. But wait, there's more. Power stancing in Elden Ring lets you use 2 weapons of the same type in each hand, giving you a unique moveset where you attack with both weapons. Unfortunately, you need 2 of the weapon to do it, which means you need to start a new game cycle or find a friend online to hand them to you, most of the time. The claws automatically enter a power stancing moveset when you 2-hand them. You don't need a second weapon and can still have an offhand weapon equipped, which will be more important later. Since you're attacking with both claws in sort of a hug attack, that makes your effective bleed proc 120, almost triple that of the katana. They're also really fast. Each attack comes out quickly, and it's effectively 2 attacks. That consistent speed means that even though they're relatively light weapons, they can still break an enemy's poise with relative ease. The only real downside is the short range and dependence on bleed. If we run into any bosses that can run away from us or don't bleed, that could be a bit of an issue. So it's a good thing we still have plenty of HP, and we could get even more if we get a little regeneration. Our first form of regen is going to come from the Assassin's Crimson Dagger, a talisman that heals you when you land a critical hit. That's a backstab, a grounded stab on someone who fell off a mount, or when you break an enemy's poise and get all up in their guts. Since we're using the claws, the critical hit animation has 2 hits, which means it also heals twice as much. It's like it was perfectly built for Wolverine. To get it, we just have to go through the death-touched catacombs and fight Elektra. Another weird pick for a boss in a Wolverine game, but I'll take it. This is also going to give us a death root, which we could eventually use to buy the bestial incantation Bestial Vitality. That's a spell that heals you 5 HP per second. It stacks with the Blessed Dew talisman, which heals you 2 HP per second, but there's no footage of me grabbing either of those, so why not? Well, we'll talk about that later. For now, we need to get sharper. The first step to getting better is improving our diet. Specifically, we need pickles. Remember that gold pickled Foulfoot from earlier that gave us more runes when we killed that dragon? Turns out there isn't a limit to how many you can use in a run. You just need to beat up a scumbag. Head to the Murkwater Cave and fight Burr, or whatever his name is, and go inside. To the right, you'll see a chest with all the pickles you could ever want. Oh wait, this is worthless. Patches ambushes us, but he's not prepared for my shredding technique. You can kill him or let him live. I decided to let him live. Wolverine doesn't love murder, he's just really good at it. Reload the area and you can buy 3 pickles right away and a recipe for pickles so we can pickle our own at home. But if you don't have your own pickling liquid, store-bought is fine. Now that we have a proper diet to become a huge jacked man, we need to sharpen our claws. A quick run through the Limgrave tunnels will give us enough smithing stone 1s to hit +3, and then smithing stone 2s and 3s from the Raya Lucaria crystal tunnel. On the way to get smithing stone 4s, we can grab another crucial piece of the Wolverine puzzle, some feral rage. Right below the Ruin-Strewn Precipice, there's a teardrop scarab that drops the Barbarian Roar Ash of War. Bars. Not only does this give us a temporary damage boost, it turns your charged strong attack into a flurious combo that's great for stacking bleed and breaking poise, if you don't mind committing to a bit of a hefty animation. This whole area is great for Wolverine, since it also gives us another method of regeneration from the Serpent God's curved sword. It's hiding behind a giant land octopus, but that's slow, so we're just gonna sneak right past it for a sword that heals us every time we kill an enemy. If we wanted a talisman that does this, we'd have to finish the entire Volcano Manor questline, which doesn't even become an option until you unlock the mountaintop of the giants. This way, we can get it earlier without wasting a talisman slot, and because of how the claws work, we can still 2-hand the claws and leave the sword in our offhand for the healing benefits. It really makes running through dungeons a lot more manageable, especially since it heals you a percentage of your total HP. We have a lot of HP for this point in the game. By the end of the climb, we'll have enough smithing stones to get our claws to +13. But before we kill the magma worm, first I want to improve our diet even further with a quick trip to Caelid. There we'll find the abandoned cave, which despite its name is still very full of enemies, and very, very full of scarlet rot. Thankfully, our big boy vigor means that we're pretty resistant to scarlet rot, so we don't even get diseased, until we fight the boss. The clean rot knights are annoying, in an area that's already annoying because of a bunch of rot. One has a counterattack after you hit them with enough attacks, and a charge grab that impales you and fills you with rot. The counterattack wasn't a big deal. It's easy enough to dodge even as a member of the Itty Bitty Claw Committee. The impalation though, I got hit by that. It gets a little hard to dodge because the other Clean Rot Knight is gonna spam laser discs at you like a high fidelity movie fan, but they're both weak to bleed, and you have a bit of time with the first one before the second one stands up, so just be aggressive. Be aggressive, and you can make it out of the fight easy peasy. Or I did. This time, these guys kill me a lot. Maybe it's because I always try and fight them early to get the Golden Scarab Talisman. That raises your rune acquisition by 20% and stacks additively with the pickles, I think. Maybe it's a multiplier, I haven't done the math. Overall though, it just makes us level up much faster, so we don't have to spend a bunch of time farming Mogwyn Palace. That means that when we go back to the Ruin-Strewn Precipice to duke it out with Fing Fang Foom, we'll get 36,000 runes instead of 24,000. Oh, and the boss fight's really easy. He's big, dumb, and slow. The only thing you have to watch out for is his charge. Sometimes he'll just decide to spam it and waddle forward as a big hitbox, spraying magma everywhere like some sort of lava dragon. But that wasn't an issue for me on this run. Just slap him with a bunch of bleed and you can ride the elevator up to the Altus Plateau. For some reason, riding this elevator aligns the stars and calls down Thanos. But before we can fight him, we need 2 more pieces of Wolverine, an adamantium skeleton, and some more regeneration. For that, we make a pilgrimage to the Weeping Peninsula and remember our lumberjack days by turning an Erdtree avatar into wood chips. While the Erdtree avatars are immune to bleed, this is one of the early area versions, so its HP is low, its attacks don't deal that much damage, and I can dodge most of them without issues. Killing it gives you 2 physic tiers, both of which we'll be using. The Opaline Bubble tier reduces damage from your next hit by 90%. It's that real adamantium feeling. The Crimson Burst Crystal tier heals 7 HP per second and doesn't stack with the Blessed Dew Talisman or Bestial Vitality, which combine for 7 HP per second. Since we can do either or, I'm taking the one that won't force us to dump points into Faith and doesn't take up a talisman slot. With that, we'll have all of the pieces for one of the Ultimate Marvel characters, so let's go take on one of the Ultimate Marvel villains, Thanos. Turns out there's a bunch of other Marvel heroes that want to help us take down the Mad Titan. We've got Blade, Iron Fist, Deadpool, Thor, Heal Girl. I'm sure there's a healer girl in Marvel somewhere. Okay, apparently there's a Morlock who's literally named Healer. Fitting, since our fight with Thanos is gonna send us to the underground. But first, we need to take him down. Thanos is big. He hits really hard, he's fast, and can spam projectiles like nobody's business. Naturally, we beat him first try. Despite the phenomenal cosmic power, Thanos is weak to bleed. And if he can bleed, we can kill him. Especially when we have other Avengers distracting him. Okina, Deadpool, is our favorite, because he's also stacking bleed with us. So when he goes down, I got a little bit nervous. But with everyone standing in a circle smacking him over and over again, eventually he got staggered. Here's the critical part in my strategy. Don't go for the critical. Sure, I'd heal a little bit of HP, but if you stick to the side and keep comboing the claws, you can get off a bleed proc. That means he starts phase 2 with around a quarter of his HP. Kind of important, because phase 2 is a lot harder, so it's a lot easier if he just has less HP. Thanos dies at 1 hour, 52 minutes in-game time. I'm doing great. I eat a pickle and start pumping up that arcane. It's a surprise tool that'll help us later. Blade tells us about a big hole in the ground, and hey, I'm sorry, but it's funny how short Wolverine is compared to Blade. This is comics accurate. We stan a short king. Now let's jump in a big hole in Limgrave. It's where we'll get a very important item and a very important friend. Apparently Thanos was stopping a bunch of meteors from hitting the world, and we had to kill him so the meteors would hit the world. You know, hero stuff. That's gonna lead us to Nokron, the Eternal City, where the Morlocks are keeping all the good stuff from us. First, we'll grab some ghost gloveworts, good herb, and a bell bearing so we can buy less good herb at the round table. Then we make our way to X24, an evil clone of us under Morlock control. Unfortunately for them, they didn't clone my claws, my armor, or my childlike sense of wonder, so I'm the favorite to win. Funnily enough, the Mimic tier fight here is slightly harder with the Wolverine build, since our big health pool also gives the clone a big health pool. When I say slightly harder though, I mean very slightly. He can't deal damage to us, it makes the fight pretty easy. Also, quick side note, I chose the hairiest setting for body hair, and this is what Elden Ring considers excessive body hair? Maybe I'm biased, but come on, this is nothing. Give me hairy DLC from Soft. Anyway, deeper into Morlockron, we can find a secret entrance to the city part of the city. We jump across some rooftops like Spider-Man and grab the black wet stone, one of the most important items for this run, since we can turn our standard claws into blood claws. It means that the bloodiest weapon in the game just got bloodier. Right next to it, behind a fog wall, is another one of the most important things to this run, the Mimic tier. As far as using Spirit Ashes go, I'll only use them if there's a good in-character reason to. Wolverine has a daughter, /clone, that loves to /clones, X23, so the Mimic tier is a go. Other characters are gonna use other Spirit Ashes, they're in the game. I'm gonna use them. If you don't wanna use them, that's fine. But if I didn't use them, it would just make these videos take way longer to come out for some arbitrary flex. I'm not about wasting time. So here's a bunch of stuff that didn't matter, or maybe it did because it gave me runes. I went to the X Mansion, also known as Raya Lucaria, because I thought I might need to respec the build at some point. This means that I'm gonna kill a dragon, grab the key, ride up to school, kill a dog, kill Captain America, kill some kids, and kill Emma Frost. It's okay though, Emma Frost was still in her villain era, and those kids were also villains? Turns out we didn't even end up respecing, so we just killed some kids and added 20 minutes to the run for no reason. Whoopsie! Back to the important things, popping into a chest in the Dragonburnt Ruins in Limgrave will blue-skidoo us into Celia Crystal Tunnel in Caelid. Anytime you open a door in Elden Ring, there's like a 5% chance it's gonna send you to Caelid. This time though, we want to go to the bad place. Celia Crystal Tunnel is full of a bunch of failed Spider-Man wannabes, but more importantly, Smithing Stone 5s. Not quite enough to get us all the way to plus 15, so we still need to dip over to the Altus Tunnel for 2 more. We don't need any more beyond 12 to get us to plus 15, so we don't fight the bosses in either tunnel. Celia's would drop some plus 6 stones, but that means fighting a Falling Star Beast, which is immune to bleed. It's fast, it hits hard, and honestly, I just don't want to do it. The Altus Tunnel ends with a Crystallian gank and gives you a bell bearing to buy Somber Stones, another thing we don't need for this run. Lord knows, I don't need any more gank fights in my life, but Wolverine could use a girlfriend. Dude is thirsty. So let's win a nice maiden's heart by running over to Caria Manor and fighting a horse ghost. I don't know what Marvel character to call Loretta, maybe like Kate Bishop or something. There's 100 years of history. I'm sure there's a lady on a horse at some point. Killing her leads to the Three Sisters area, named for the towers that reside there. One belongs to Ronnie the Witch, another belongs to Celivis, a man who isn't related to her, and a third is for Renna, a lady who might have mattered a while ago, but doesn't appear in the game, and maybe trained Ronnie, but also is maybe Renala, or maybe is Ronnie, but is also not Ronnie's sister. So I don't know why they call it Three Sisters. It should be called Ronnie and 2 other casters who know Ronnie. She wants us to go on a quest to become her husband, and hey, Wolverine could do worse. Taking a few steps in her quest line later will let us level up our daughter. Obviously, she needs a strong female role model and some good herb. At this point, I was nearing the end of my first stream and didn't want it to end on a run through the Morlock Stella to pick up some herb. So I thought I'd take on Ghost Rider, also known as the Draconic Tree Sentinel. This is the first boss of what I like to call Elden Ring's no fun zone. Since the Vigor stat soft caps at 40, investing more points into it gives you diminishing returns. But starting at the Draconic Tree Sentinel, every boss is going to kill you in 2 to 3 hits at 40 Vigor. So you can't get enough health fast enough to take more hits, and you can't armor up enough to resist the damage. It just makes the last half of the game a little not as fun as the first half. Still, I wanted to end the stream on a high note, so me and my daughter sharpened our claws, shouted it out, and got to work. With our bleeding powers combined, boosted by all that investment in Arcane and our smithing stones, we were able to chop up Ghosty and the flaming horse he rode in on. First try at 3 hours, 11 minutes in-game time. Bleed is so good. Thank God all of the bosses are vulnerable to it. Well, almost all of them. The first boss of my second stream was at the end of Leyndell, the royal capital. Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. Technically, it's just his ghost, so it's more like the Danger Room version of Godfrey. Since he's not a meat man, you can't make him bleed man, and that gives us a little trouble. First, I switch my claws from blood to occult. It still scales with arcane, but replaces the extra bleed damage with just more raw damage. He's pretty fast, but doesn't hit as hard as the Draconic Tree Sentinel. Still, 23andMe had to take a few runs at him to get through those ghostly defenses. Right after Godfrey, Electra is back for revenge, but I killed her before she could cause me much trouble. Then you can make your way up to Morgott, a boss that's actually vulnerable to bleed. So that means an easy first try victory. Or second. Or actually, I forgot to grab some more pickles, so we need to make that a third try. The pickles we bought from Patches are all gone, so we need to make some homemade Canadian cukes. There's a bunch of puffins next to the first step site of Grace in Limgrave, but the ingredient we need from them doesn't have the best drop rate. Thankfully, investing in Arcane for blood also gives us higher item discovery. But if you're doing this at home, just use a bow and hunt them without scaring them away. It's a lot easier. Anyway, back to Morgott. We can summon Melina, or Psylocke, to help us deal with this ugly bastard. He's basically Margit, because he's literally Margit, but he's got some new toys. Most notably, a bunch of swords that fall from the sky and stunlock you into place so you get hit with more swords. In phase 2, he gets really sick and makes it everyone else's problem, coughing all over the arena and making his phlegm bubble up in random patches. With the raining swords and his own active flaming blood sword. So all of that took a few tries, but eventually we won, and Psylocke gave us a ticket back to our home and native land. Then she asks us to go commit arson. Before we can do that though, we need to squish the rest of the Omen family line, killing off Joe and Bo Omen on the way to the Divine Tower of Altus. That's going to give us Morgoth's Great Rune, another surprise tool that will help us later. Now, we're off to the Great White North. First things first, take in that sweet Canada air. Second things second, remember why you left. Canada is cold as shit. So I want to get Logan out of here fast. We dip into the Zamor runes for a ball bearing that lets us buy smithing stone 6s, which we can use to get our claws to plus 18. Then we bail, to bond with our daughter in the underground, with some rad critical attacks and some really good herbs. Continuing Ronnie's questline will let us make our way to Noxtella, the second Morlock city, with all the herbs we need to level up X23 to her maximum HP. We grab the Glove Picker's bell bearing and the remaining herbs to get the Mimic tier as high as possible. In level. It is herbs though. Also on this trip, I learned that the dismounted critical with the claws is rad as hell. Not important since there are very few mounted enemies in the game and no mandatory ones to fight, but it's rad, and I might honestly go fight some Knights Cavalry for fun when this video's over. Now that we've got our herbs, we need enough money to actually level up our clone. Apparently good herbs are very expensive. No seeds or stems, I guess. I decide to go kill Ziggy, I'm calling him Fing Fang Tomb. It's easy. He's weak to bleed, we're over leveled, we just want to make sure not to get rotted by his stinky breath. After that, we can go fight the ultimate boss of the mountaintop of the giants. Not the fire giant. It's the other premier Canadian Weapon X member, Deadpool. He's wearing a goofy old man mask and calling himself Okina, but I know it's him. Normally, I wouldn't really talk about this. I'm actually just here to grab an extra sacred tier for the flask and eventually hop into a skull for a final upgrade material for our claws. But this dude rocked me over and over again. Deadpool is using the Rivers of Blood katana, which is one of the top tier PvP weapons because of its bloody slash. It's got a huge range, it's really fast, and it procs bleed. That makes it pretty hard to get in with short claws. Really though, this was a skill issue. I was trying to fight him like a boss, not an NPC. Jump attacks are great against bosses, since their attacks are slower and their bodies are bigger. Against an NPC though, you're more often than not gonna end up just hopping over them, with a lot of dead frames on your landing, leading to a punish. The extra poise damage from the jump attack is also wasted, since NPCs and other players in PvP don't have their posture broken until their stamina runs out, which won't happen since their stamina recovers as quickly as yours does. All told, I died to Okina 6 times. That's around 16% of my total deaths in the entire run against one Canadian in a silly mask. Whoops. Thankfully, there's an easy boss after this, the Fire Giant, or as I'll call him, Surtur. More of a Thor villain and not really one Thor fights, since he's an unstoppable force of fiery destruction. Naturally, me and my daughter beat him on the first try. Fake Stralife says that the Fire Giant is resistant to bleed, which I guess is technically true. But since we're dealing 100 bleed proc per hit, or more accurately 200, with 2 claws, and our daughter is doing the same thing, that doesn't matter. Unless you're fully immune to bleed, you do not resist bleed at this father-daughter dance of death. In phase 1, you tickle his ankle until his bracelet falls off. Trust me, it's just as sexy as it sounds. Phase 2, he decides he's too ticklish and rips off his own foot so he doesn't pee his kilt. At this point, you're supposed to aim for his wrists, but they're only vulnerable when he performs specific attacks. Turns out all of his body can bleed though, so ignore that, and I'm just gonna hit him wherever the hell I want. We give him the tickle, then we eat the foul pickle and get a lot of runes. Fighting an enormous fire god who can endure ripping off his own leg and summon meteors, easy first try victory. Pissed off Canadian? That's the hardest boss in the game. Guess there's a reason Deadpool is Wolverine's main rival, other than that other guy. Psylocke commits arson, good for her I guess, and we wake up in a strange crumbling city. Who hasn't been there? Do some hardcore parkour all the way down, skip the dragon, and now I'm ready to face the Blob and Pyro, everyone's favorite boss, the Godskin duo. Plenty of people have complained about this fight, so I don't have to. But I do want to, so here's the beef. There's 2 of them. The skinny one is fast and is gonna catch you if you get greedy or mistime a roll. The big one is faster, and he can conjure a wall of black flame around him that deals percentage damage to your health. That's bad, we have a lot of health. Oh, and at this point in the game, remember, we don't actually have a lot of health. If that weren't enough, phase 2 gives the big boy an unstoppable rolling attack. Sometimes you can hide behind a pillar. Sometimes he just decides you can't and flattens you anyway. To be fair, the skinny one actually gets a little easier in phase 2, in my opinion. It gets these stretchy attacks that are slow and you can get in and hit them a lot. But even with my daughter, beating these chumps was no easy feat. Unlike previous FromSoft ganks like Ornstein and Smo, Throne Watcher and Defender, or Captain and Tennille, once you take one of these two down, the other one comes back 15 seconds later. That just means it starts a clock where you need to kill the survivor before his pissed off boyfriend comes back to life. Bleed makes it slightly easier, so it only took me 3 tries. I can't even imagine how horrible this fight would be if they were immune to bleed. Oh, except I can, because the next boss is Godskin Duo 2, Godskins United. Thankfully, killing the corporeal version gives us the last bell bearing we need to max out our claws before we take on Godskins 2. In a cave back in Canada, there's an evil ghost snail who summons ghost versions of the Godskin Apostle and a noble for you to fight. There's also a bunch of dogs in the cave running up to that hang out by the fog door during the boss fight and distract our daughter for the first bit. Small mercy though, the fight isn't a gank. It's a marathon, with the Godskin Apostle as the opening act for his bigger, badder boyfriend, switching the claws back to a cult for some extra damage, and it's not actually all that bad. It also rewards us with another method of regeneration, the Godskin Swaddling Cloth. That heals you after you make a combo of rapid attacks, which we can do since the claws are fast and every attack is 2 attacks. That healing is also based off of total percentage of health. If only we could actually level up our health to take advantage of that. Back to crumbling Faram Azula, some parkour will give us a small mercy with the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman +2. That's going to boost our physical damage resistance by 15%. It makes the late game damage a bit more manageable, but since it forces you to give up a talisman slot, I still don't love it. Good thing we don't really need all that many talismans. Ghost Rider is back, blocking the next boss door, and he's extra pissed. He's so pissed, he won't let us use our horse or summon our daughter. Technically, you don't have to fight him. You could just sprint past him to the boss door, but the next boss is kinda hard, and I'm worried I'm gonna have to do the run back several times. But after 2 horse girl fights, I'm prepared enough to bob and weave and live through the fight. Ghost Rider does not. That's how fights work. One person wins, the other one loses. Through the fog door is another boss, some priest guy who worships beasts. Didn't think Hank McCoy was the type to start a cult, until phase 2 reveals this boss's true form, Sabretooth, our ultimate rival, this time with a sword. I guess FromSoft was playing it a bit loosey-goosey with the rules. Phase 1, Sabretooth is fast. He throws rocks and has an AoE claw attack. Nothing too hard for X23 in me. Despite Fakestra Life claiming he's resistant to bleed, nothing resists bleed against this build unless it's fully immune. Even in phase 1, the father-daughter duo is getting multiple bleed procs. The resistance really kicks in phase 2. Not because his resistances actually go up, he just starts hopping all around the arena, making it hard to get a combo going. All of his sword attacks also start a damage over time effect and reduce your maximum HP. You might not notice that though, because even with our increased defenses from that new talisman, Sabretooth is still able to kill us in only a few hits. But we're fast enough and still hitting bleed enough to take him out on the second try. Legendary warrior who stole the power of death and imbued it into his sword, 2 tries. Angry Canadian, 6 tries. Beating these harder bosses is really just hammering home that you shouldn't mess with Canada. Killing Sabretooth gives us another hangover, and now we wake up in the Ashen capital. Apparently, there was a wildfire up north that coated the whole city in smoke and ash. How could Psylocke do this?
Who killed Hannibal? Who killed Hannibal?
We cowabunga down a hole for the Crimson Amber Medallion +2, which is going to raise our maximum health by 8%. I deliberately found this one, thought it would be important, and then I got lost. Quick reminder, if you think you've seen all of Elden Ring, you probably haven't. The world is so massive and full of surprises behind every nook and cranny that you should always take a little time to get lost. At least that's my excuse for forgetting where the next boss is. I was justified though because this is where I found the Ritual Shield Talisman, which reduces damage by 30% when you're at maximum health. Pairing that with the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman, this is going to make the first hit we take much easier to heal off. I'm really glad I got lost. We're going to need that for the end game. The first boss in the endgame is one of our oldest friends and mentors, a father figure who's been guiding us through the whole game, Sir Gideon Ofnir, or Professor X if you're playing Elden Ring. I would talk about the traumatic implications of the fight, but the professor is not suited for combat and is dead so fast I don't have the time. He starts the fight with a monologue that lets you run up and carve him up before he starts spamming spells at you. Dying to Deadpool so many times was actually great practice for this. I remembered not to jump attack and just give him lots of hugs. Hugs that also have razor sharp claws. Unfortunately, Fortunately, killing Professor X means there's nothing holding back the Juggernaut upstairs. Remember that ghost we fought earlier that was immune to bleed? This is the fleshy version of him that can bleed. But he's bigger, faster, and stronger too. He was the first Lord of the Elden crew. That means extra speed, and the fact that the first time you fight him spawns you directly in front of him, we're gonna take an L. But that's the only L we take. Even though Juggernaut is unstoppable, if you just take all the blood out of his body, he gets real sleepy. Phase 1, he's throwing his axe and swinging it at you. But phase 1.5 is what I actually find the most difficult. He stomps with a giant AoE that goes across the whole stage. It's super fast. You can roll through it or jump over it, but I just never get that timing down. Since we just bled him really fast though, we don't really see that phase. Phase 2, he unleashes his anime powers, dropping his lion training weights and getting really into grapple combos. You wouldn't know it though, because X23 and me dodge all of those throws and hack him up while he winds up for big attacks. That extra defensive talisman allows us to just tank the hit, heal up, and dive back in. Only one boss left. Well, kinda two, maybe three. The final boss is Radagon, or in our Elden Ring, Thor for some reason. He's got a big glowing hammer, sometimes he's a woman, sometimes she's dating himself. It's a bit complicated, can't wait for Love and Thunder. Fighting Thor is pretty dang fun. He's fast, he hits pretty hard, and has AoEs you need to dodge with great timing. It's everything a final boss in a FromSoft game should be. He's also immune to bleed. The strategy that has carried us through the entire game goes out the window for the final boss. Whoopsie. So we'll switch our claws back to the occult mode for some extra damage. That's gotta help us get through Thor pretty consistently, but after that we've got like a space whale dragon. All the love I have for Thor as a final boss, throw it out. I dislike the Elden Beast immensely. I don't think his damage is too much for a final boss. I don't mind that he shows up after you fight another boss. I don't even mind that he's got attacks my mimic tier is too stupid to dodge. My issue is that this bastard does not sit still. 90% of the fight is just spent chasing this monster down, avoiding the spells he fires at you, only for him to dive away right after you get next to him. It's even more painful with these small, skinny claws. It really feels like a fight you're meant to ride your horse in, but there's no horse here. Oh well. Honestly, it just wasn't working, so I needed some more holy resistance. Funny thing though, we didn't respec like I thought I would because Arcane is the stat that gives you holy resistance. We're gonna push that higher with the Pearl Drake Talisman +1 from a chest up in Altus. That's +7% resistance to all non-physical damage, which pairs with the Ritual Shield Talisman's boost as well. Also in Altus, we're gonna replace the Opaline tier with the Crimson Spill tier in our Physic Flask, which will give us some more total HP. To get it, we have to fight Wormface, a gangly bastard that vomits up Deathblight. FromSoft really looked at the basilisks and said, hey, what if we made it taller and gave it more health? You gotta respect that level of chutzpah. Now that we've got all that, we can go back into the fight against the dynamic duo. One of them is dynamic, the other one is a slug I despise. All of that strategizing and rebuilding still isn't enough though. We still end up getting tossed around like a bunch of poutine, which means it's time to bust out our secret weapon. Remember when we killed those Omen twins to activate Morgoth's Great Rune? That's gonna give us 25% more HP when we spend a rune art. There are several scattered through the lands between. We've picked up 4 through our travels. You can grab more doing multiplayer, but I don't want to do that. With that in the Crimson Spill tier, that's going to give us 37% more HP. That's a health bar that's literally halfway across the screen. It also means X23 will have more HP, and the Godskin Swaddling Cloth will heal us more as we combo these last 2 bosses. Even with all of that HP, it's still not enough to make this a free fight. What we need is something beyond health, beyond bleed, and beyond cloned daughter power. We need luck. Honestly, the Elden Beast fight, every time I've ever beaten it, just comes down to the slimy boy deciding he's not gonna run away. I'm sure it's something in the AI that's calculating my positioning, my weapon choice, my body hair, etc. But I'm not a hacker. I'm not Neo. I can't read the code of the game. So for me, the Elden Beast fight is just, please use the sword so I can win. And this time he did. And we beat Elden Ring as Wolverine with an in-game time of 6 hours, 8 minutes with 0 deaths. Other than 8 deaths to Radagon and the Elden Beast, and 6 to Okina. And this one was pretty funny. This seems risky, but it's swag jump for safety! And to be honest, 37 total deaths. Since this is the first run in the series, I don't have a lot to compare it to, but getting to use the Mimic tier and bleed, I don't know how it's gonna get much better than that. We're gonna put it in A tier for now, just out of S tier because of how rough those final 2 bosses were. Overall, this was really fun, and I'd love to do more videos like this. So share it with your friends who like Elden Ring, subscribe, and like the video to help it get some love. Also, if you like Dungeons and Dragons, I've done this kind of thing a few times on another channel, about 400. Check that out if you want to. Thanks for watching, and sub to the page Patreon if you want to watch these runs live. It'll also help get these videos out faster. We'll get another one up pretty soon.